Willow hated me for taking advantage of her vulnerability. At her most helpless moment, I forced her to marry me. She cursed me, calling me a despicable, shameless man, while enjoying my simp-like devotion. However, the day she found a new lover and broke up with me, I had an unexpected car accident. From that day on, I underwent a drastic change. Simp? That's gone, because the humble simp died in the car crash, leaving behind a madman who bites anyone he meets. Chapter 1. I am a personality inside David's body, and my name is George. I always emerge at David's most painful moments. The first time I appeared was when he was 8 years old, locked in a small, suffocating trunk after being kidnapped. That night, one of the kidnappers threatened to slice his flesh and boil it for hot pot if the ransom wasn't received. That was when I opened my eyes inside his body. Unlike the timid, weak David, I am calm, strong, and cold-blooded. I told the quietly sobbing David, "What are you afraid of? You have me." He paused in his sobs and panically asked in his mind, Who is talking? I slowly replied, "It's me. I'm inside your body. You can call me George." During the wait for the ransom, he talked to me every day. He asked, "George, are you the personality split from me? Are you the person I imagined? Do you really exist? I'm glad you're here with me. George, with you, I'm not afraid." Later, I taught him how to cut through the rope on his hands, and while the kidnappers weren't paying attention, he stretched his hand out of the trunk and left a clue. A passerby called the police, and he was saved and sent home. I was about to disappear, but when he got home, it seemed like no one was there to welcome him. His father, busy with work, didn't realize he'd been kidnapped for a whole week, and of course, never received any ransom messages. His stepmother cried, "It's good that you're back, as long as you're safe." But then she turned and said, "Worthless kidnappers, they should have killed him earlier." His stepbrother laughed and patted him on the back, but his fist was clenched, and he slammed it down hard, grinning as he said, "Oh, David, you've lost weight from all the suffering." David's body trembled uncontrollably. He begged me in his mind, "Please don't leave. George, stay with me. I'm scared. I'm so scared. Please." So I stayed. After that, we shared his body. When things were safe and happy, he controlled the body. When things were dangerous or disgusting, it was me. I am not like David. I would directly counter his scheming stepmother without mercy when she threw insults. I would threaten his bastard stepbrother, holding a sharp knife and scraping it just past his temple before plunging it into the wooden doorframe behind him, viciously saying, "Next time, I'll stick it in your eye." I would grab the leader of the bullies at school by the head and force it into the water-filled sink, releasing him only when he was about to suffocate, saying, "If you mess with me again, I'll drown you." At those times, David would always talk to me inside his body, saying, "George, I'm so glad you're here. We'll always be together." Okay, I had read books and knew that in bodies with multiple personalities, they would do whatever it took to erase the other and gain full control of the body. But David and I were different. We relied on each other, supporting each other, like brothers. At that time, I looked into the mirror, gazing at our shared face, and promised him, "Okay, we'll always be together." The face in the mirror smiled happily, and it was David's smile. It was like a stream thawing in spring, flowing gently over pebbles, clear, free, and clean. At that moment, I thought, I would protect his smile forever. This is the reason I was split off. My only mission. He only has me. Chapter 2. But our anomaly was soon noticed by others. After all, having two completely opposite personalities and temperaments in one person, no matter how careful you are, will always give something away. David's stepmother told his father that she often saw David talking to himself. David's stepbrother told his father that David had tried to kill him with a knife. At school, a teacher informed his father that some students reported that David sometimes seemed like a completely different person, sometimes gentle and friendly, other times cold and indifferent. For David's father, who cared so much about face, this was a huge embarrassment. He slapped David across the face, causing his mouth to bleed, and angrily shouted, "How could I raise such a lunatic?" Before David and I were taken away to the private psychiatric hospital, David's stepmother leaned against the door, smiling smugly as she looked at David. She said, I personally selected this hospital. David, don't be afraid. Once you're better, you can come back home." The private psychiatric hospital's method of treating David was to use convulsive electroshock therapy. I was trapped inside David's body and couldn't escape, forced to watch as they electrocuted him. David and I tried pretending I wasn't there, hoping to deceive them, but every time we were discovered, they would force him to look into a mirror when he was foaming at the mouth and delirious from the shock, and ask him what his name was. They would withhold food for 2 whole days, and on the 3rd day, they would place tempting chicken legs and drinks in front of him, promising that as long as he erased me, he could eat. They wouldn't let him sleep and would change the room's temperature between extremes of cold and heat. They weren't treating him, they were torturing him. I told David to give up, to cooperate and erase me, but the timid him somehow found the strength. He curled up in the corner of the large, empty room, hugging his knees tightly, as though that would make him less afraid and cold. He clenched his teeth until they bled. The timid child who had cried every night when he was kidnapped now stubbornly refused to shed a single tear. He said, "I won't abandon you, George. I won't let you disappear. We promised. We'll never be separated. This time, let me protect you." Finally, that night, when he was about to be electrocuted to death, I hypnotized myself and made myself disappear. Before disappearing, I said to David, "I'm only temporarily leaving you. David, don't be afraid. Walk forward with courage. I'm watching you. If one day you can't hold on anymore, trust me, I will come back and be with you." He thought I was lying. He threatened loudly that if I left, I would never come back, then begged me, "George, don't go. Please. I can endure it. It doesn't hurt." Really, I looked at him in pain, unwilling to close my eyes as he cried in his agony and despair. A vow is a vow. 14 years later, on the day he was at his lowest point, I opened my eyes inside his body. I didn't understand how a person could feel such sadness. It was like in the pitch-black night sky. The vast ocean and sky merged together, with no visible horizon, only huge waves crashing one after another. His heart ached and suffocated at the deepest part of the sea, but I heard his laughter. At 25, he sat upright in a lavishly decorated living room, with brilliant lights shining down on him, making him seem radiant. He had grown up, taller, with a straight posture, handsome features, and a carefree smile. The woman standing in front of him, exquisite and adorned in jewels, looked at him with disdain. She rolled her eyes and said, "What's so special about you? I feel disgusted just looking at you. Go die." That was really harsh. David's brow furrowed slightly, but the smile on his face didn't falter, the curve of his lips perfectly in place. He smiled and said, "Well, sorry, Willow." His tone calm and indifferent, as if stating a fact. "No matter how disgusting it is, you'll have to look at this face for the rest of your life." Even after Willow left, his smile remained. It wasn't until I sighed and spoke inside his body, saying, "David, stop smiling," that he froze for a moment, the smile on his face slowly freezing. I don't know how much time passed before he slowly started smiling again, and I saw the bitterness in his eyes. He smiled, his tone light as a sigh, as if the 14 years of separation had never happened. He called me, "George." I smiled and said, "I'm here." Chapter 3. 25-year-old David is no longer the David I remember. He used to be timid, fearful, and often bullied. Now, he smiles all the time. His smile clings to his face like a mask, each bit of cheer precisely measured. Everything he does has a certain poised ease. He told me about these past 14 years. He said that in the vicious and complicated environment of his family, he learned many methods of self-preservation. He learned how to hide a dagger behind a friendly smile, using the tactic to achieve his own goals. For example, when he was 18, after his stepmother became pregnant, he tampered with her car so that she almost died in a car accident. Later, on the luxurious spiral staircase of their home, he spread a thin layer of olive oil. Then he stood at the top, eyes lowered in cold indifference, watching as his stepmother slipped and tumbled down step by step. He smiled and calmly told me, "George, did you see the blood under her? It was beautiful." Another example, when he was 19, he hired someone to steal his stepbrother's gold-digging girlfriend. Then, in the living room, he mocked his stepbrother, who was drinking heavily and foolishly because of the breakup. His enraged stepbrother, provoked beyond reason, grabbed a rope from the table, no one knew who had left it there, and wrapped it around David's neck. Just then, their busy father returned, saw this scene, and flew into a rage. At that moment, David, strangled and gasping, his face bright red, but no one noticed the smile on his face once he turned away. David continued, "After that, that beast was sent away, not even allowed to show his face around me." "George, your methods were too gentle. Doing it this way handles everything in one go, doesn't it?" Then at 21, he brought home his pretty but weak-willed god-sister, who always looked for shortcuts. It just so happened they ran into his father. After that, his stepmother completely fell out of favor. The god-sister told him, "David, your father said he's going to divorce and marry me. Don't worry, I'll listen to you." She really did listen, at least enough to ensure that after graduation, David smoothly entered the company and began taking over operations. He told me a lot, and I stayed silent the entire time, probably because I didn't respond. His tone gradually cooled until he was expressionless. He said, "George, you're just like Willow. You think I'm a despicable, shameless man, don't you?" He sat quietly in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and asked, "George, do you also think I'm scary?" I sighed, my tone calm, and asked him, "David, all these years, being on your own, you must have suffered a lot, right?" I don't usually go for sentimentality, but I couldn't help feeling heartache for him. I smiled and said, "I'm happy for you, David. Really, I'm glad you learned how to protect yourself." He was taken aback. Then I shifted the conversation, my voice turning cold, and asked, "So tell me, who's causing you pain?" "Yes, he's 25 now, and I'm relieved by how he's grown, but I haven't forgotten. Every time I appear, It means he's in pain, pain so devastating he can't bear it. I recalled Willow's look of disgust when she gazed at David, and that sentence, "You make me sick, go die." I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh, then asked him, "You like her?" After all, only when you like someone do you give them the power to hurt you. Even the now hard-hearted, 25-year-old David can be troubled by love. He has no reason to hide anything from me. I watched him let down his guard, his face gradually showing confusion, sadness, and a hint of childish bewilderment. He asked me, "George, I've been so good to her. I gave her everything, so why doesn't she like me?" Chapter 4. Willow is his fiancée, and they got engaged 3 years ago. It was a business marriage. 3 years ago, Lou's father suddenly died in a car accident. Willow, the only daughter of the Lou family, was studying philosophy abroad and had to return to handle the aftermath and take over the Lou group. At that time, David started replacing his father at board meetings. Before he attended that meeting, his father told him, "The Lou family's a big catch, and we've got it in the bag. I've been eyeing their foreign trade logistics line for a long time. If it weren't for Martin Lou's accident, I'd never get my hands on this. I heard his daughter is taking over the group. What does that little girl know? She'll be eaten up sooner or later. David, go dig into their details. Find out everything you can." So, David went and met Willow. David said, "George, you must be wondering why I fell in love with Willow." He paused, then continued. "The first time I met Willow was actually when I was 16. After you disappeared, I was tortured for a while before being sent back. Back then, I was timid and weak, bullied without knowing how to fight back. All I could do was shout your name in my mind, grit my teeth and silently endure. I comforted myself, telling myself that if I endured, it would pass. It wasn't until David was locked in a pitch-black equipment room that things changed. Because of his kidnapping experience as a child, he developed claustrophobia. He screamed wildly in the dark, pounding the door until his hands were swollen. But no one heard him. No one came to his rescue. Even I wasn't there. Until Willow's voice came, light and ethereal, like a heavenly melody that calmed his out-of-control heart. She playfully said, "Hey, you cry so much, you'll never find a wife. Calm down. I'll bring the police over." When the door opened, he saw her standing there, backlit, like a goddess descending from the sky, pulling him out of the mire. That memory seemed to be one of the few warm moments in his life. He smiled faintly, wistfully, and said to me, "George, do you know? That tiny suffocating trunk has always been the abyss of my nightmares." But when Willow pushed open the door and reached out her hand, saying, "I'm here," I felt like she was traveling through 8 years of time, pulling 8-year-old me out of that tiny trunk. After that, he searched for her. When he finally found out her name, she had already gone abroad. It wasn't until many years later that they met again. At that board meeting, David stood outside the conference room, staring blankly at the back of the woman sitting at the table, resting her chin in her hand, lost in thought. It wasn't until she heard the sound and looked over that he saw her familiar features, which reminded him of that night 9 years ago. With Lou's signature eyebrows and almond eyes, she smiled and reached out her hand to him. She said, "You must be David, right? I'm Willow. Nice to meet you." She didn't remember him, nor did she recall that casual act of saving him 9 years ago. Outside the conference room, the post-rain skyscrapers rose from the ground like bamboo shoots, their glass facades reflecting the dazzling sunlight. David stared at her, absorbed, and slowly smiled. Feeling nostalgic, he said, "Hello, Willow." "I'm David." He thought to himself, "I've been looking for you for so long, waiting for you for so long." This was a sentence he never spoke, and Willow would never have the chance to hear. Chapter 5. I asked, "But it doesn't seem like your relationship is very harmonious." David sighed and said, "I used the wrong methods, George. My whole environment growing up taught me how to hate someone. No one ever taught me how to treat others kindly. Besides you, no one ever treated me kindly, so I don't understand." So, at the beginning, he proposed a deal to Willow. This was what he was best at. That board meeting made him realize Willow's predicament. The executives, each with their own interests, the directors fighting to carve up the Lou family's empire, and even distant Lou family relatives trying to claim their share. But Willow didn't seem as fragile as he had thought. In that chaotic meeting, she pressed her lips together, silent, as many of the directors argued loudly over the unequal distribution of interests. She seemed to have accidentally knocked over a glass on the table. The crisp sound cut through the noise like a knife, and the room went silent. Everyone fell quiet and looked at her. 23-year-old Willow furrowed her brows slightly and, under the gazes, spoke with calm composure, saying, "Why aren't you continuing to argue? I thought none of you cared about your dignity." Everyone fell silent. Only David, sitting across from her, smiled at her through her gaze. Later, in the now empty meeting room, David stayed behind. He refilled a glass of water and placed it beside Willow. With a slight smile in his eyes, he asked, "Willow, let's make a deal, shall we?" "A business marriage," David said to Willow. "Let's get married. I'll help you steady this chair you can't seem to sit in." It was a proposal that was both enticing and cold. But after her initial shock, Willow refused. She snorted and said, "Mr. Wong, I'm not willing to trade my marriage if I ever get married. I want it to be to someone I love, not as a business transaction. This rejection didn't anger David. On the contrary, he liked her more. After that, he appeared by Willow's side several more times, each time during her most difficult moments, and each time, Willow coldly and distantly rejected him, until the last time, when major banks began pressuring the Liu family, and the company's funds were in crisis. The rain was pouring down heavily. After her meeting with the banks, Willow came out without an umbrella. She was getting soaked, and from behind her, David held an umbrella over her head. He sighed and said, "Willow, my proposal still stands." Willow didn't speak, but silently looked up at him from beneath the umbrella. David added, "You turned me down today, and tomorrow my father will initiate the acquisition of the Liu Group." "Why?" Willow asked, her voice filled with confusion. "Why me?" David turned his gaze away and lied to her, saying, "Because you need me. You need the Wang family, and you know my situation. I have a young stepmother eyeing me, and a stepbrother exiled. My father still has the ability to have children. The Liu family is in turmoil, and a marriage between us is the least risky and the most profitable. We are a perfect match, aren't we?" Willow believed him, and they got engaged. David thought that if he told her he liked her, she would never believe it and would think he had ulterior motives. Only a pure exchange of benefits would make her agree. He had to first get her, then make her love him. David said to me, "George, I'm so stupid, aren't I? I forced her to agree to the marriage, trying to make her like me, but not wanting her to be grateful to me. So she will never know what I've done for her." What had he done for Willow? For example, he convinced his father to abandon his plan to encroach on the Liu family despite immense pressure. He took a huge risk, presenting the benefits of the marriage to his father's suspicious gaze. He casually replied when his father tested him, saying, "It's just a matter of perspective. How could I like her? Isn't it obvious which is more useful to us, the divided Liu family or the powerful group, Dad?" Then there was the engagement. When the news broke, it dominated the headlines, and with the Wang family's backing, the banks finally stopped pressuring Willow. But Willow, raised as a pampered rich girl, saw her engagement to David as an insult and a forced humiliation. This caused her great pain, so she remained distant and cold towards David, never truly becoming close. They had moments of harmony. However, they shared many common topics and interests, and they would joke about the scheming old foxes in the board meetings. Willow would make soup for him when his stomach hurt, and remind him to dress warmly when the weather got cold. They would eat together, go on dates, enjoy dance and drama performances, acting just like a typical engaged couple. Though there was a faint distance between them, it was not the intimacy of lovers, more like completing a task. Until later, David said, "In the first year of our engagement, I went to Lou's to find her. She was talking about a collaboration with Luis from the Bai Group. What I didn't expect was that after the conversation, they shared a knowing smile, and then I saw Luis happily hug her. Although he quickly let go, Willow actually blushed and gazed at him with affection. We've been engaged for a year, and she's my fiancée. She won't even let me touch her hand. Yet she allowed another man to hug her, and she even looked at him shyly. So I walked in, saw that man smiling at Willow, and told her to stop the collaboration. At that time, Willow's funds were all coming from the Wang family, and she couldn't refuse David. She asked David why he insisted on ending the collaboration. David's tone was nonchalant as he replied, "I just don't like him. Why ask for more reasons?" Willow didn't respond, but Luis awkwardly laughed, probably feeling uncomfortable himself, and proposed to cancel the collaboration. Willow's gaze shifted from Luis to David, and she quietly stared at him for a long time before giving him a mocking smile. From that point on, they drifted further apart. David felt pain this time because he had shut out a writer who had openly confessed his love to Willow on social media. Knowing that she was his fiancée, the writer had come to Willow, pleading with her to get Wang Xiao to stop. Willow, however, didn't care about this. She simply used the situation to her advantage. Willow questioned him, asking if he really needed to be so ruthless. She mocked David, calling him despicable and shameless. I recalled the suffocating pain in David's heart when I first opened my eyes inside his body. David looked at me through the reflection in the glass, smiling, but his smile looked more like a grimace. His tone was filled with genuine confusion as he asked me, "George, I've never used any of my methods on her. Is it wrong to protect myself? Is it wrong to be proactive when someone's trying to steal my girlfriend?" His expression was filled with anguish as he asked, "Why is she saying this about me? Did I do something wrong?" "You're not wrong. Of course, you're not wrong. If anyone says you're wrong, if they say you're evil, then they're the ones who are wrong, not you." Chapter 6. I despise Willow. I didn't hide this feeling in front of David. I spoke with the calculated subtlety of a court advisor from ancient times, slowly guiding him like a villain scheming against a loyal minister. "David, break up with her." He just smiled, his eyes filled with melancholy as he sighed. "But George, I've liked her for so many years. How could I give up on her?" I said nothing. That is, until we discovered that Willow seemed to have developed feelings for someone else. It was David's birthday. No matter how cold Willow was toward David, they were still, at least on paper, an engaged couple. The Wang and Liu families had been in a business partnership for 3 years, and their intertwined interests couldn't be disentangled by a few arguments. David called Willow, his tone calm, as if the argument they had days earlier had never existed. He said, "Willow, do you have time tonight? Let's have dinner." Willow agreed. This was high society. No matter how tacit the understanding between two people, they would always maintain some decorum, showing no trace of emotion. The private restaurant that evening had a beautiful atmosphere, and Willow even gave him a gift. David's smile never faltered, but I knew he was genuinely happy. Even though the tie was just a trivial gift, insignificant compared to the jewelry he had given her, he still thanked her earnestly. "Thank you, I really like it." The dinner went on with casual conversation. At this point, everything seemed fine, until I noticed something was off with Willow. She seemed distracted. This was a small thing, but in their world, for someone to be absent-minded, especially in such an environment, meant danger. Coffee was something that could never leave your hand in this world. With so many people and so many eyes watching, you had to be as precise as a finely tuned machine, making sure there were no mistakes, no slip-ups. But Willow had spaced out. David asked her a question twice before she came back to her senses, apologizing with grace. "Sorry, I didn't hear that clearly. Could you say it again?" David was unbothered, calmly repeating, "Next Sunday, my dad has invited us to the birthday party of the daughter of the president of Citigroup. Will you go?" Willow hesitated for a moment before replying, "Sorry, I have plans next week." David nodded, picked up his tea to hide his expression, and when he set the cup down, his smile had returned. He casually changed the subject, as if it didn't matter at all. After dinner, we sat in the car. He was silent for a long time, then finally spoke to me. "George, she's troubled." I nodded. "Call the private detective. Have them follow Willow." The expensive private detectives worked fast, and soon David and I learned the cause of Willow's unease. Makoto, a reporter from the Golden Daily, had interviewed Willow 2 months ago. It was Makoto who had interviewed her. I flipped through the photos with David. The usually elegant and poised Willow was dressed in a simple white dress, looking pure and lovely, walking hand in hand with Makoto on a shaded path. They looked like a perfect couple, even holding a cup of milk tea. In the photos, David's hand softly caressed Willow's cheek, and his fingertip lightly brushed the corner of her lips. His voice was low and helpless, as if transported back to years ago, when he asked me, "George, do you think Willow really likes him?" I scoffed. "We'll find out soon enough." I approached Willow. She didn't even notice the difference between David and me. I sat in front of her and smiled. "Willow, last week, my friend saw you go to a movie with a man. Even though we have a business engagement, I expect loyalty from you. At the very least, don't embarrass me in front of people we know." Willow paused, her voice casual, with no emotion on her face, and a carefree air. She said softly, "It's nothing. It's just part of our publicity stunt." I smiled and said nothing. A few days later, photos of her getting into another writer's car appeared in the newspapers. David and I looked at the photos in the paper and sneered. I said to him, "Looks like true love, using these business tactics to divert attention." David didn't speak, putting down the newspaper and picking up a photo taken by the private detective. Under a blooming wisteria tree in a park in Zone C, Makoto, with his head lowered, was kissing Willow on the forehead. Even through the photo, you could feel the purity and sacredness of their love, untouched by any impurity. How beautiful. Even in front of the media, she never allowed David to kiss her, even though they had been engaged for 3 years. I looked at David, his expression cold as he continued to stare at the photo. I said, "David, forget it. Forget her. She's not worth it. If it were me, I would use this photo to negotiate with Willow, take Liu family shares, and break off the engagement, throwing her aside. But that's easy when you don't care about her, just purely cold, strategic thinking." But David loved her. He gritted his teeth and said, "No one can betray me, George. I'll make them pay. It doesn't matter if she doesn't like me. I don't care, George. I've figured it out. I just want her. Even if she doesn't like me, she'll stay with me for the rest of her life, unless one day I decide I don't want her anymore." Willow called David a despicable man. David smiled, the meaning behind his smile unreadable. He said, "Then I'll show her just how despicable I can be." Chapter 7. The next day, David was the same David I knew, polite, impeccably dressed, and his actions graceful, without a hint of loss of control. He called Willow, his tone calm as he informed her of an interview with the newspaper. Sometimes, wealthy people must appear as a loving couple in public to stabilize stock prices, keep investors calm, and maintain the board's confidence, while also publicly announcing the unbreakable alliance between the two families. That day, Willow received the call and was silent for a long time. Finally, she hesitated and said, "David, there's something I need to tell you." What could it be? Perhaps she was thinking about calling off the engagement. Now that the Liu family was no longer struggling as it had before, and the situation had improved, she might have started pursuing true love. I watched the smile at the corner of David's lips. The angrier he got, the calmer he became, the more out of control he was. The gentler his smile would grow, his eyes deep and unfathomable. It was a side of him that was unfamiliar to me. He interrupted Willow and said, "Let's talk about it after the interview." Willow paused, then agreed. The interview was well organized, and David sat next to Willow with a smile on his face. They were a perfect match in every way, wealthy and powerful families, and their appearance fit together seamlessly. Someone remarked, "How could such a perfect couple exist?" David put his arm around Willow's shoulders and, with a hint of affection, spoke about their engagement and past, mentioning how Willow depended on him, how she cared for him. He spoke at length, and by the end, it seemed as though he almost convinced himself that Willow loved him as much as he claimed. Willow didn't contradict him, likely for David's sake, as she remained silent throughout his entire speech. It wasn't until the end of the interview that David and I exchanged glances, scanning the bustling crowd. There he was, the dark-faced Makoto. When David had arranged this interview with the editor-in-chief, he had specifically insisted, "There's a reporter named Makoto, right? Make sure he's there for the interview." That was when David truly smiled. He asked me, "George, do you think Willow will realize what's happening and call me despicable again?" I didn't respond. He looked up at the sky, seemingly indifferent, and added, "Whatever she thinks of me now, it doesn't matter anymore." In fact, Willow wasn't angry. When she stood before David, her tone was calm. She said, "You arranged this interview on purpose, which means you already know about Makoto, right? Then let's call off the engagement." David looked at her expressionlessly and asked, "What if I don't want to?" Willow was puzzled. "Why wouldn't you want to?" "I'm willing to make concessions with the shares." "David, our engagement was always a business arrangement, wasn't it?" David's face turned pale, his expression frozen for a moment. He asked, "From the beginning, you saw this engagement as a business deal, so the repeated delays on the wedding date had been because she never intended to marry him. Once she no longer needed this business partner, it was naturally time for the partnership to end. She didn't even feel guilty." Willow added, "I agreed to marry you back then just to compromise." "Oh, to compromise." David's heartfelt devotion had only been her compromise. Perhaps David's face turned too pale, and Willow hesitated for a moment, looking at him with a puzzled expression, asking, "David, why are you looking at me like that? You don't love me, and I don't love you. A marriage like this will only cause pain." David smiled at her words. With every sentence she spoke, his smile grew wider, until by the end of her speech, he was grinning with genuine delight. He said, "But Willow, what if I tell you that I'm not indifferent to you?" He had once told me that he didn't want Willow to feel compelled to be with him out of gratitude. He wanted her to fall in love with him. He said, "One day, when she loves me, I'll tell her about our first meeting 12 years ago. I'll tell her I've loved her for 12 years, waited for her for 12 years, and finally, she'll love me back." George, doesn't that sound romantic? We'll get married, have 2 children, grow old together, and when I'm too old to walk, we'll sit with our grandchildren and tell them the story of our love. Willow hadn't fallen in love with him, so he had to admit his feelings beforehand. But after hearing this, Willow only frowned in confusion and said, "David, I don't remember anything from 12 years ago." David stared at her, his smile gradually fading. Willow hesitated, then added, "And I've done some research. David, when you were a teenager, you managed to exile your stepbrother, caused your stepmother's miscarriage and divorce, and even tried to seduce your own father." She rolled her eyes and said, "David Wong, young master of the Wong family, you have plenty of schemes, so betrayal and manipulation in the business world should be something you're used to by now, right?" But the next moment, slap. Her words were cut off, because I couldn't take it anymore. I slapped her across the face. Seeing David like this for the first time, she turned around to look at me, shocked. I shook my hand and coldly locked eyes with hers, speaking slowly and deliberately. "Willow, you're truly despicable. David has countless schemes, yet he never used any of them on you. But from the beginning, you've been scheming against him. He's blind to have fallen for someone like you." After saying that, I turned and walked away. Maybe my third-person phrasing confused her. She looked at me in confusion, not understanding, but I didn't care to explain. Chapter 8. David remained silent inside my body. I asked, "Are you hurting?" His only true heart had been discarded like a worthless object. I asked him, "If you hadn't met Willow at 16, would you have fallen for her?" He paused for a moment before replying, "No, but he had met her. What could he do? It wasn't too early or too late. Her timing was simply too perfect. She was bathed in a vague, ethereal light in David's memory. He was obsessed with having her, as if she were a dream from his youth that he could never quite reach." I sighed and asked him, "Can you really not like her? You're too soft on her. It's affecting what I can do. I want to get revenge for you, but I still have to worry about your feelings." His voice was tired, a wearied tone full of confusion. He said, "I don't know, George. I don't know which way to go." He was lost, and only Willow could throw him off balance like this. I didn't want to see him like this. All I could do was comfort him. "It's okay, David. I'm walking with you. I will always be by your side. I will never betray you, never scheme against you. You can always trust me, through rain or wind. I'll always be here. I will never leave you alone. I didn't expect that Willow would hurt him more than I imagined. The day David disappeared from this body was the day he was supposed to go with Willow to try on wedding dresses. Even though he knew she didn't intend to marry him, he still went, holding on to a sliver of hope. It was a dress designed by the famous Japanese designer Yumi Katsura, inlaid with 1,000 pearls and a rare platinum diamond, valued at $8.5 million US. That day, when he and Willow went to order it, he still remembered the well-trained sales assistant offering just the right compliments. Miss Lu, Mr. Wang truly loves you. A wedding dress this extravagant is truly rare. But now, she wouldn't even come to try it on. When they arrived at the store, the assistant's face turned pale. She said, Mr. Wang, Miss Lu said she won't come for the fitting. Don't worry, there's still time before the wedding. Girls can be coaxed. David didn't speak. I think he knew the dress would never be worn. It wasn't about the dress not fitting or being too expensive. It was that, from the very beginning, that woman had no intention of ever wearing it for him. After leaving the store, a taxi ran a red light and hit him on the sidewalk. It wasn't serious. The doctor said it was just a minor scrape. The police said it was such a small traffic incident. They could settle it privately. The taxi driver, face flushed with embarrassment, said, Sir, you don't look like someone who's short on cash. I have an elderly parent and young children to take care of. Please, don't try to scam me. No one took the accident seriously, but I knew. David had disappeared from this body. Before disappearing, he looked at the taxi, and I heard him call my name. He said, George, I'm so tired. Yes, he was so tired. Since he was young, he had been forced to fight, to scramble for everything. After all this time, it turned out to be nothing more than an illusion. He was tired. He just wanted to rest. I took control of the body, gently saying before his eyes closed, It's okay, David. If you're tired, just sleep for a bit. When you wake up, everything will be better. I promise. Chapter 9. When I opened my eyes, I overheard Willow speaking with the doctor. The doctor said, We've done a full checkup. Mr. Wang only has minor external injuries. Nothing serious. Willow asked. Then why hasn't he woken up yet? The doctor replied. It might be due to the shock. He'll wake up in a little while. Willow responded. Thank you, doctor. After thanking him, she turned around and saw me open my eyes. Her smile faded the moment she saw me wake up, gradually turning into an expressionless face. After a while, she coldly spoke. David, the accident was in the city, and the driver was going only 15 miles per hour. He barely even touched you. Stop pretending. I didn't respond to her. She probably thought David was trying to sell a sob story to win her back. She said impatiently, David, what exactly do you want? That's when I finally looked up at her, cold, detached, indifferent. I looked at her in confusion, raised an eyebrow, and softly responded, What do I want? Willow, when you and Makoto secretly changed your hearts, wasn't David still your fiancé? Even if you hate him and think he's despicable, can you deny that he never wronged you? When you returned to China at 23 to take over the Lu family, everyone bullied you, wanting to strip Lu family bare. Wasn't it David who threw you the last straw? Over these years, the cooperation between the Wang and Lu families has brought you quite a bit of benefit, hasn't it? Over all this time, honestly, hasn't David done nothing wrong to you? I paused for a moment, stared directly into her eyes, and smiled, asking each word slowly. Then, even if you don't like him, when he was still your fiancé, shouldn't you at least respect him? I know you were forced into this engagement, and from your perspective, I wish you the courage to pursue true love, but at the very least, shouldn't you have waited until David agreed to break off the engagement before pursuing your true love? The third-person phrasing seemed to confuse her. She furrowed her brows and, while studying me in my questioning, finally said, I've already told you. I'm willing to take responsibility for my mistakes. I smiled and said, But Willow, if it weren't for David, the entire Lu family would belong to the Wang family now. What would you even have to negotiate with me? I threw off the covers and got out of bed. As I passed her, I looked down at her coldly captivating face. She looked up at me, her lashes fluttering slightly, eyes deep and filled with a hint of confusion and disbelief. In that brief moment as I walked past, she grabbed my sleeve, asking, You're not David. Who are you? I sneered at her and said, Didn't Miss Lu do a background check on me? How come you didn't find out I once stayed at a psychiatric hospital? David is dead. Willow, the person standing before you now is another David. Don't you hate him so much? Congratulations. He'll never show up in your world again. She froze for a moment. I ignored her. I called the driver to come pick me up. When I returned to the mansion, David's father was eating, and David's beautiful, harmless god-sister was serving him. I looked into David's father's eyes and said, Dad, I want to call off the engagement with Willow. It's not that I want to, it's that I will. The slap that landed across my face wasn't surprising at all. The faint taste of blood filled my mouth, and I could hear a buzzing in my ears. David's god-sister gasped, clutching David's father's arm, trying to calm him down, saying, Hey, Let's talk it out. No need to hit. David's father spoke calmly, saying, "It was you who insisted on marrying her. Now that the Liu family is doing better, you say you no longer want her." "David, you won't get away so easily with Willow," I said. "She doesn't like David." I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth. "Like?" David's father laughed, not noticing my choice of words. He spoke with a dismissive, indifferent tone. "When you insisted on the business marriage with her, didn't she already not like you?" I smiled. If there had been a mirror, I think my smile would have looked exactly like David's. My tone was light as I said, "But now, I don't like her either." Chapter 10. I called Willow, getting straight to the point. My tone was cold and direct as I asked, "Willow, we can call off the engagement, but my condition is 49% of the Liu family's shares." There was a pause on the other end before she coldly replied, "Impossible." I knew she wouldn't agree. Of course, after all, she wasn't a naive fool in love. 49% of the shares was a game changer, and I had already anticipated her reaction. So I smiled and said, "It's fine. You can give me the 49% based on the highest point of the last 6 months." She couldn't give the shares, but she could certainly pay. The sum was enormous, but I knew she could manage it. As long as she could rid herself of me, she'd be willing to pay. The day we signed the contract, there were quite a few people present, with both sides' lawyers meticulously reviewing each clause of the contract, while I sat by the window, watching the birds fly by. When it was time to sign, Willow looked at me and confirmed, "We no longer owe each other anything, right?" See, she didn't mention David at all. She didn't ask if he would come back or why he disappeared. She only cared about severing ties with me. I took a sip of tea, something David had never touched. He liked wine, coffee, but never tea. Willow's gaze lingered on the cup in my hand for a moment, and I smiled. Of course, as we parted ways, I called out to her, and she turned back, confused. I smiled at her, just like David would, and said, "Willow, David doesn't love you anymore. He loved you for a long time, but I think it's time to tell you, he doesn't love you anymore." Willow didn't respond. Her eyes darkened as she studied me for a moment before turning and walking away. That was the last time I saw her. After receiving the money, I readily agreed to hold a press conference to announce the end of my engagement with Willow. I smiled at the cameras, though my smile was stiff, as if I were forcing strength. I said, "We've parted on good terms. Our families will continue to cooperate in certain areas, so there's nothing to worry about." Liu's stock fluctuated as a result, but it didn't matter. In time, when people forgot about this, her stock would rise again. Willow and I weren't celebrities, but in our circle, it was a gossip sensation. During that time, people eagerly speculated about the real reason behind our broken engagement. I smiled and said nothing, until someone posted a thread titled, "Show us the most well-matched couple in your opinion." Someone posted pictures of Makoto and Willow. For some reason, the post suddenly went viral, with someone asking, "Wasn't Willow Wang's fiancée?" Attached to the post was the article from when David and Willow were interviewed, titled, "Fairy Tale Romance in the Aristocracy." The photo showed David smiling indulgently as he had his arm around Willow's shoulder. Someone replied, "I heard they broke off the engagement recently," but others were skeptical, posting a pointed question. "Wait, looking at the timestamp in this photo, isn't Makoto the third party?" See, I told Willow, "It's okay to pursue true love, but at least do it after the engagement is called off." Gossip always draws attention, and the thread was reposted on Weibo and Douban, eventually spiraling into discussions about the most successful extramarital affairs. Even acquaintances cautiously sent me links saying, "David, don't be upset." Well, I was so upset. I looked at the steep drop in Liu's stock chart, and I couldn't help but laugh through my tears. Makoto was probably having a tough time as well. I spotted him from a distance at the newspaper office. His eyes were sunken, his face haggard, and the looks from his colleagues were filled with disdain. Oh, I heard his boss had discreetly suggested he resign, since his actions had caused severe damage to the company's image. I sat in the car, smiling, and spoke to the David who was still asleep inside my body. "David, are you happy?" No one answered me. Chapter 11. I received a call from Willow 3 days later. She was upset. "David, how can you go back on your word?" I absent-mindedly sipped my tea, speaking in a casual tone. "Business is business. Miss Liu, you have plenty of methods, so betrayal and flattery in the business world should be something you're used to by now, right?" She was taken aback. I smiled, and just before hanging up, I suddenly had a thought. I smiled warmly and spoke in a calm tone. "By the way, Miss Liu, I haven't congratulated you and Mr. Ito on finally getting together, but there's one thing David never wanted to tell you, but I'm not him. You see, I'm the helpful type." A friendly reminder. Miss Liu, if I were you, before getting involved with Makoto, I'd have someone look into his background, like his father, who is currently in prison for causing a death in a drunk driving accident 3 years ago. I wonder who he killed. On the other end, there was silence, followed by rapid breathing. I smiled more broadly, enjoying the moment. I said, "Do you think your father, if he knew, would come up from underground to confront you if he found out you were in love with the son of the man who killed him?" When David and I got that photo, We had Makoto fully investigated. I remember smiling at David back then, saying, "This is good, you won't have to do anything. Once Willow knows who his father is, these two will break up on their own." But David held onto the photo, his expression dazed. He asked me, "If Willow knows, she'll be really heartbroken, won't she?" It was enough. Look, how long has it been? In Willow's eyes, he was the despicable, ruthless Wong family villain. She called David despicable. She said, in business, David had the means, so betrayal and deceit were things he should be used to. She treated David like that, yet he would still ask me, "If Willow knows, she'll be really heartbroken, won't she?" This is the David she sees as despicable, but it doesn't matter. I'm not David. David fears her heartbreak. I do not. The more pain she feels, the more satisfaction I get. I kept this secret, waiting for the moment when they thought they had overcome everything, thought they had won their true love, thinking they had defeated me, the despicable villain standing in their way. And then, I would deliver the final, fatal blow. Go ahead, Willow, David and I, we will always wish you the best, but before that, everything you took from David, I will take back. The more you hurt him, the more I will make you hurt. It's truly satisfying. A year later, David's father had a stroke, and I fully took over his entire empire. He sat in a wheelchair, his face slanted, unable to speak or move, and I crouched down in front of him, holding his withered, wrinkled hand, sighing, "Look at you. How did you end up like this?" He couldn't answer me. He just maintained his contorted expression and made incoherent sounds. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror. No matter how much I smiled, I couldn't find David's reflection. The person in the mirror was cold, detached, and emotionless. I called out, "David," over and over, just like he once called me. I told him that his father had suffered a stroke and was now in a nursing home. Finally, I said, "I've paved the way for you. You'll never be tired again. Why haven't you come back?" The person in the mirror didn't respond. It just coldly stared back at me. I sighed. When David woke up, it was spring. As the warm spring breeze filled the air, I said, "David, wake up. The spring is so beautiful. If you miss it, you'll have to wait another year." It was quiet. I said, "It's okay to be sad about love, to be heartbroken, but there's a time limit. If you sleep any longer, it'll be rude." The breeze gently brushed past. I waited for a long time, quietly, in an empty room. I chuckled bitterly and looked at the pile of documents in front of me. When I opened the first folder, I heard a soft laugh. He said, "The spring is so beautiful, but I'm stuck with these headache-inducing data. George, I really don't want to look." I froze for a moment, then slowly started to smile. I said, "Then let's not look at them. Let's go see the ocean, see the mountains, go to Tibet, go to Mongolia. If you get tired of those, we can go abroad together. The world is so big, and the scenery is so beautiful. Let's go see it, step by step." He smiled, just like the first time we met, like a stream slowly flowing through pebbles, clear, free, and clean. He said, "Okay." A long time ago, David asked me what I really was. He asked if I even existed. To be honest, I don't know either. But does it matter whether I'm real or if I'm a figment of a psychiatric imagination? It doesn't matter. David once told me, I am his refuge, the only light in his darkest days. Life is hard, but I've always believed that pain and its cure exist together. If you can grit your teeth and push through, you'll find the cure hidden within the pain. The only thing you can rely on in this world is yourself. So you have to love yourself and never give up. Just like a certain author once said, the heart is like an endless, confusing river, stretching for miles. There's no one to ferry you across except yourself. No one else can help you. David asked me what I am. I am him. He is me.